Natalie Harper stood in the corner of the elegant ballroom, feeling completely out of place. The Seattle Art Foundation's annual charity auction was filled with wealthy donors, wearing designer clothes and expensive jewelry. Natalie looked down at her simple black dress, the nicest thing she owned, and wondered why she had agreed to come. Her college professor had insisted she attend, saying it would be good for networking. But so far, all she had managed to do was avoid eye contact with anyone who looked important. The 22-year-old graphic designer had graduated 3 months ago and was still living in her tiny apartment, taking whatever freelance work she could find. Tonight was supposed to be about making connections, but instead, she felt invisible among all these successful people. She took a sip of her wine and watched the auction proceedings with quiet interest. The artwork displayed around the room was breathtaking, and at least she could appreciate that, even if she could not afford to bid on anything. Across the room, Dominic Sterling surveyed the crowd with practiced ease. At 36, he had attended hundreds of these events. As the founder of Sterling Properties, one of the most successful real estate development companies on the West Coast, he was expected to show his face at every major charity function. His tailored navy suit fit him perfectly, and his dark hair was styled with just enough casualness to soften his otherwise intimidating presence. He had learned long ago how to navigate these social situations with charm and efficiency. Tonight, however, Dominic felt particularly restless. The conversations were predictable, the people were familiar. He found himself going through the motions without any real engagement. He had built an empire over the past 12 years, but somewhere along the way, his personal life had become empty. His last relationship had ended 2 years ago, and since then, he had thrown himself completely into work. Friends told him he needed to slow down, to find balance. But Dominic did not know how to be anything other than driven and focused. An awkward introduction, Annalie decided to move closer to the bar, hoping a second glass of wine might ease her nerves. She was not usually this anxious, but something about being surrounded by so much wealth and success made her acutely aware of her own struggles. As she walked through the crowd, she tried to appear confident, but her attention was divided between watching where she was going and admiring a painting on the nearby wall. She did not see the person stepping backward until it was too late. The collision happened in slow motion. Natalie bumped into someone solid, and her wine glass tilted forward, splashing red liquid across an expensive-looking suit. She gasped in horror, her hand flying to her mouth as she realized what she had done. Standing before her was possibly the most handsome man she had ever seen, and she had just ruined his suit. Dominic looked down at the spreading red stain on his jacket, then up at the young woman who had caused it. Her face had gone completely pale, and her brown eyes were wide with mortification. For a moment, he felt the familiar irritation rising, but then he saw how genuinely distressed she looked. Her hands were shaking as she grabbed napkins from a nearby table, apologizing profusely. "I am so sorry. I am incredibly sorry. Please let me pay for the cleaning, or the replacement. I do not have much money right now, but I can make payments." Natalie was babbling, dabbing uselessly at his jacket with the small napkins. Her cheeks had turned bright red. She looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Dominic found himself smiling, despite the ruined suit. There was something refreshing about her genuine distress. Most people at these events were so polished and controlled that real emotion rarely showed through. He gently caught her wrist, stopping her frantic dabbing. "It is fine, really. It is just a suit. Just a suit." Natalie looked at the clearly expensive fabric and felt tears prickling her eyes. "That suit probably costs more than my rent for 3 months. I am such a disaster. I should not have come tonight. I do not belong here anyway." An unexpected connection, something in her words, touched Dominic. He recognized that feeling of not belonging, even though it had been years since he had felt it himself. He remembered being young and struggling before he had built his company. When he had attended events like this and felt like an imposter. "Hey, everyone belongs here. This is a charity event, not an exclusive club. And honestly, you are doing me a favor. I hate this jacket. My assistant bought it, and I have been looking for an excuse to get rid of it." Natalie looked up at him, surprised by the kindness in his voice. She searched his face for signs that he was mocking her, but his expression seemed genuine. "You do not have to be nice about this." "I know I messed up," Dominic extended his hand. "Dominic Sterling. And you are definitely not a disaster. A little clumsy maybe, but I have seen much worse at these things. Last year, someone knocked over an entire champagne tower. Natalie Harper." She shook his hand, noticing how warm and strong his grip was. "And that makes me feel slightly better, but only slightly." They stood there for a moment, hands still clasped, and something passed between them. Natalie felt her heart rate quickened, not from embarrassment this time, but from something else entirely. Dominic found himself reluctant to let go of her hand, intrigued by this flustered young woman who seemed so out of place yet so authentic. "So, Natalie Harper, what brings you to this particular torture session?" Dominic asked, finally releasing her hand and gesturing to the crowded ballroom. "Let me guess. You are an artist and you are here hoping to make connections." "Graphic designer, actually. Fresh out of college and desperately trying to figure out how to turn my degree into an actual career, my professor practically forced me to come tonight. She said I needed to network, but I am terrible at this kind of thing." Obviously, she gestured to his stained jacket with a rueful smile. A rainy night and unexpected help, they talked for the next hour, standing in that same spot while the auction continued around them. Dominic found himself genuinely interested in Natalie's stories about her struggles as a new designer. She talked about her passion for creating visual narratives, her tiny apartment that doubled as her studio, and her dream of one day having her own design firm. There was no pretense in her words, no attempt to impress him or angle for an advantage. She was simply honest. And Dominic realized how rare that had become in his world. Natalie, for her part, was surprised by how easy Dominic was to talk to. She had expected someone wealthy and successful to be arrogant or dismissive, but he listened with genuine attention. He asked thoughtful questions about her work and seemed actually interested in her answers. She learned that he had started his company from nothing, that he had grown up in a working-class neighborhood, and that he still remembered what it felt like to struggle for every opportunity. When the auction finally ended and guests began filing out, Natalie realized with a start that she had spent the entire evening talking to one person. She had completely forgotten about networking or making professional connections. Yet somehow, this felt more valuable than a dozen business cards. As they walked toward the exit together, the reality of the situation began to sink in. This amazing, successful, handsome man had spent his evening talking to her, and now it was ending. Outside, rain poured down in heavy sheets. Natalie groaned, realizing she had not brought an umbrella. Her car was parked 3 blocks away in a cheaper lot because she had not wanted to pay for valet parking. She pulled her thin jacket tighter and prepared to make a run for it. "Wait here." Dominic disappeared for a moment and returned with a large black umbrella. "Let me walk you to your car." They hurried through the rain, huddled close under the umbrella. When they reached her old sedan, Natalie tried the door and felt her heart sink. The lock was stuck again, a problem that happened whenever it rained. She jiggled the handle uselessly, feeling the evening's earlier embarrassment returning. "This is not my night." She laughed, but it sounded close to tears. "My car hates rain. The lock swells up or something. Usually it opens after a few minutes, but in this weather, who knows how long it will take." Dominic made a decision without overthinking it. "Come on, I'll give you a ride home." "My car is in the valet lot. I cannot ask you to do that. You have already been so kind, and I ruined your jacket, and now this is just too much. You are not asking. I am offering. And honestly, Natalie, I would like to continue our conversation. This has been the most enjoyable evening I have had in months. Please let me drive you home." Natalie woke up the next morning with her heart racing. She replayed the previous evening in her mind, hardly believing it had been real. After Dominic had driven her home in his sleek Mercedes, they had sat in front of her apartment building talking for another hour. The rain had drummed against the windows while they shared stories about their lives, their dreams, and their failures. When she finally said goodnight, he had asked for her phone number, claiming he might have a project that could use her design skills. She rolled over and grabbed her phone from the nightstand. No messages. She felt a small pang of disappointment, then immediately scolded herself. What had she expected? That a successful millionaire would actually follow up with a struggling designer he had met at a charity event? It had probably just been politeness. Rich people were good at making empty promises while sounding sincere. Her phone buzzed just as she was getting out of bed. The message made her freeze. "Good morning, Natalie. I hope you slept well. I meant what I said about having a project for you. Sterling Properties is redesigning our brand identity, and I think your fresh perspective could be valuable. Would you be available for a meeting this week?" Natalie read the message 3 times, her hands shaking slightly. This was real. This was actually happening. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on something that sounded professional, but not too eager. She hit send, and then spent the next 20 minutes second-guessing every word she had. Written building something real. The meeting happened 2 days later in Dominic's downtown office. Natalie arrived 15 minutes early, wearing her best professional outfit and carrying a portfolio of her work. The Sterling Properties building was impressive, all glass and steel reaching 30 stories into the Seattle skyline. The receptionist directed her to the top floor, where Dominic's office occupied a corner with breathtaking views of the city and Puget Sound. Beyond, Dominic greeted her warmly, and Natalie felt some of her nervousness fade. He was wearing a charcoal suit today, perfectly tailored, and she noticed he seemed more relaxed than he had at the auction. He introduced her to his business partner, Gregory Mitchell, a sharp-eyed man in his early 40s who studied Natalie with obvious skepticism. "So you are the young woman who assaulted Dominic with wine?" Gregory said with a slight smile that did not reach his eyes. "I hope your design skills are steadier than your hand." Natalie felt her cheeks flush, but she met his gaze directly. "I promise my professional work does not involve throwing liquids at anyone, unless the client specifically requests it." Dominic laughed, and even Gregory's smile became slightly more genuine. They spent the next 2 hours discussing the rebranding project. Natalie presented her portfolio and shared her ideas for modernizing Sterling Properties' image while maintaining the company's reputation for quality and reliability. She suggested incorporating elements that reflected Dominic's personal story. The journey from struggling young entrepreneur to successful developer. Her passion for the work shone through every word, and by the end of the meeting, even Gregory seemed impressed. After Gregory left, Dominic walked Natalie to the elevator. "I want you to know this is not charity. Your ideas are exactly what we need. Fresh, authentic, meaningful. When can you start?" Natalie felt like she was floating. "Immediately." "I can start immediately." "Good, because I have another confession to make. I am not just hiring you because of your talent, although that is definitely part of it. I enjoyed talking with you the other night more than I have enjoyed talking with anyone in years. I would like to get to know you better if you are open to that, crossing professional lines over the next month." Natalie threw herself into the rebranding project. She spent long hours in Sterling Properties offices, working closely with Dominic to develop concepts that captured his vision. But their meetings always seemed to extend beyond business discussions. They would start talking about logo designs and end up sharing stories about their childhoods, their fears, their hopes for the future. Dominic found himself watching the clock on days when Natalie was scheduled to come in. He looked forward to her arrival with an anticipation he had not felt in years. She brought energy and light into his carefully controlled world. When she laughed, it was genuine and unguarded. When she disagreed with him about a design choice, she argued her point with passion and intelligence. She challenged him, interested him, and made him feel alive in ways he had forgotten were possible. Natalie was falling for Dominic. She knew it was dangerous. Every time she walked into his office and saw him smile, her heart did a little flip. Every time their hands accidentally touched while reviewing designs on his desk, electricity shot through her body. She tried to maintain professional boundaries, reminding herself that he was her client and 14 years older than her. But it was becoming harder to ignore the way he looked at her, the way his voice softened when he said her name. Claire. Natalie's best friend since college noticed the change immediately. "You are glowing," Claire observed one evening as they met for dinner. "This is not just about landing a big client. You have feelings for him. It is complicated. Natalie admitted, pushing her food around her plate. He is my client. He is older than me. He lives in a completely different world. I live in a tiny apartment with furniture from thrift stores. He probably has homes I have never even seen, but you like him. Claire pressed gently. I more than like him. I think about him constantly. When I am working on designs for his company, I find myself adding little details I know he will appreciate. When I am not with him, I am thinking about the next time I will see him. This is bad, Claire. This is really bad. Why is it bad? If he feels the same way, then maybe it is really good. The business crisis 6 weeks into the project, everything changed. Dominic received an offer from Hartman Development Group, a massive international corporation that wanted to acquire sterling properties for an astronomical sum. The deal would make Dominic even wealthier and give him access to global markets. But there was a catch. Thomas Hartman, the company's CEO, had very traditional views about business relationships. He had made it clear during negotiations that he expected Dominic to maintain a certain image, and that included avoiding any romantic entanglements that might be seen as scandalous or inappropriate. Gregory was thrilled about the potential merger. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, Dominic. We are talking about expanding into international markets, but you need to be smart about this. Hartman has old-fashioned values. If he finds out you are involved with a woman barely out of college who works for you, he will walk away from the deal. I have not done anything inappropriate, Dominic said defensively, but his voice lacked conviction. Maybe not yet, but I have eyes. I see how you look at her. I see how she looks at you. This could destroy everything we have built. You need to create distance before this becomes a problem. That evening, Dominic called Natalie to his office after everyone else had gone home. She arrived excited to show him the latest design concepts. But his serious expression stopped her immediately. We need to talk about something important, Dominic began, and Natalie felt her stomach drop. There is a potential business deal happening, a very significant one. It is going to require all of my focus and attention over the next several months. I think it might be best if we complete the rebranding project quickly and then limit our interactions to strictly necessary communications. Natalie felt like she had been slapped. I do not understand. Is something wrong with my work? Your work is perfect. This is not about your work. Dominic stood and walked to the window, unable to look at her. This is about maintaining appropriate professional boundaries. I have allowed our relationship to become too personal, and that was a mistake. I am your client. You are young enough to be at a very different stage in life. It was irresponsible of me to blur those lines. So what? You are just going to pretend the past 6 weeks did not happen? Natalie felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. All those conversations, all those moments we shared, they meant nothing. They meant something. That is the problem. Dominic turned to face her, and she saw pain in his eyes. But I have responsibilities. I have a company and employees who depend on me. I cannot make decisions based on feelings that might be temporary or based on circumstances that will not last. The media. Natalie left his office feeling gutted. She went home and cried, then got angry, then cried some more. Claire came over with ice cream and wine, listening while Natalie poured out her heartbreak. But by the next morning, Natalie had made a decision. She would finish the rebranding project with absolute professionalism. She would show Dominic that she was not just some young woman with a crush. She was a talented designer who could handle difficult situations with grace. For 2 weeks, Natalie maintained perfect professional distance. She communicated only through email, keeping messages brief and focused on work. She delivered her final designs ahead of schedule, and they were spectacular. The new brand identity captured everything Dominic had wanted, while adding layers of meaning that reflected his personal journey and values. Dominic approved the designs immediately, but felt miserable doing it. He missed Natalie's presence in his office. He missed their conversations. He missed the way she tilted her head when she was thinking about a design problem. He threw himself into the Hartman negotiations, but even closing the deal felt hollow without being able to share the victory with her. Then everything fell apart. A business reporter doing a story on the potential merger had been digging into Dominic's personal life. Someone at the charity auction had taken a photo of Dominic and Natalie talking that night. Her hand on his arm, both of them smiling. Another photo showed them leaving together under an umbrella. The story hit the financial news websites with a sensational headline about the millionaire developer and his young designer. The article was not explicitly negative, but it raised questions about their relationship and whether it represented a conflict of interest. It mentioned their age difference and speculated about the nature of their connection. Suddenly, Natalie found herself at the center of media attention she had never wanted or asked for. Dominic tried calling her immediately, but she did not answer. He sent messages that went unread. Gregory was furious, insisting that Dominic issue a statement denying any romantic involvement. Thomas Hartman called to express his concerns about the situation and its potential impact on the merger negotiations. Natalie stared at her phone as it buzzed with notifications. Her social media accounts were flooded with messages from strangers, some supportive, but many cruel. People she had never met felt entitled to comment on her relationship with Dominic, questioning her motives and making assumptions about her character. Several design clients she had been courting suddenly stopped responding to her emails. The professional reputation she had been building was crumbling. Because of a relationship that had never even properly begun, Claire found her sitting on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by her laptop and phone, trying to manage the chaos. "You need to talk to him," Claire said firmly. "You both need to figure out what you want and stop letting everyone else make decisions for you." "What is there to figure out?" Natalie said bitterly. "He made his choice. He chose his business deal over anything we might have had. I was stupid to think someone like him could actually fall for someone like me. This whole thing was probably just exciting for him because I was different from his usual world. Now that it is complicated, he is done." "You do not actually believe that?" "I saw how he looked at you when he came to that coffee shop to meet us. That man is in love with you, Natalie. He is just terrified. Being terrified does not give him the right to hurt me, no, but it makes him human." Claire sat down beside her friend. "Look, I am not saying you should forgive him easily or that you owe him anything. But I am saying that real love is worth fighting for. And I think what you two have is real." Dominic's decision across town. Dominic sat in his office long after everyone had gone home. Gregory had been pushing him all day to issue a statement distancing himself from Natalie. To paint their relationship as purely professional, Thomas Hartman had called again, making it clear that the merger was contingent on Dominic managing this situation properly. For hours, Dominic stared at the drafted statement his legal team had prepared. It was carefully worded to minimize damage to his reputation while throwing Natalie under the bus. It suggested that she had been overly familiar and that he had maintained appropriate boundaries throughout their professional relationship. It would protect his business interests and save the merger deal. It would also be a complete lie. Dominic thought about his life before Natalie had stumbled into it. He had been successful, wealthy, and utterly alone. He had achieved every professional goal he had set for himself, else that somewhere along the way, he had forgotten what any of it was for. Building an empire meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. Making money was hollow if you sacrificed your humanity in the process. He picked up his phone and called Gregory. "The merger is off. I am not issuing that statement, and I am not throwing Natalie to the media wolves to save a business deal." "Are you insane?" Gregory exploded. "We are talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. We are talking about the future of this company, no? We are talking about who I want to be," Dominic said calmly. "I built this company from nothing because I wanted to prove I was worth something. But what is the point of proving that if I have to compromise everything that actually makes me worth something? I love her, Gregory. I am in love with Natalie, and I have been since the night she spilled wine on my jacket. I pushed her away because I was afraid, and that was the biggest mistake I have made in years. This is career suicide, maybe. Or maybe it is finally choosing to actually have a life instead of just a career." The grand gesture the next morning. Dominic woke up, knowing exactly what he needed to do. He called his assistant and gave her a series of instructions that made her eyes widen. Then he called the organizers of the Pacific Northwest Business Conference, an annual event where he was scheduled to give the opening keynote speech that evening. He told them he needed to make some changes to his presentation. That evening, the conference hall was packed with business leaders, investors, and media representatives. Dominic took the stage to applause, looking confident in his dark suit. The screens behind him displayed the Sterling Properties logo and the title of his scheduled speech about real estate development trends. But when he began speaking, he ignored his prepared remarks entirely. "Good evening, everyone. I am supposed to talk to you tonight about market forecasts and development strategies. Instead, I want to talk about something more important. I want to talk about what truly matters in life." The audience shifted, confused but intrigued. Dominic continued, his voice steady and clear. "2 months ago, I met someone who changed my entire perspective. She was young, talented, and completely unimpressed by my wealth or status. She saw through all the walls I had built around myself. She challenged me to be better, to think differently, to remember that success means nothing without connection and authenticity." Natalie was at home when Claire burst through her door. Breathless. "Turn on the business news channel.
Right now."
Do it." Natalie fumbled for the remote, and her breath caught when she saw Dominic on the screen. What is he doing? Something incredibly brave or incredibly stupid? Possibly both. Claire sat down beside her, and they watched together. On screen, Dominic's speech continued. "The media has been speculating about my relationship with Natalie Harper. They have questioned her character, her motives, and the appropriateness of our connection. So let me make something absolutely clear. Natalie is the most genuine, talented, and remarkable person I have ever met. Any relationship we have is based on mutual respect, shared values, and real feelings. The only inappropriate thing about it is how long I let fear and concern about public opinion keep me from being honest about how I feel." The conference hall had gone completely silent. Cameras flashed as reporters captured every word. Dominic looked directly into the camera, as if he could see Natalie through it. "I was offered a business deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The condition was that I distance myself from Natalie and prioritize my professional image over personal relationships. I have declined that deal. Some people will say I am making a foolish choice, that I am letting emotion cloud my business judgment. But I have learned something important. Building an empire means nothing if you lose yourself in the process. Success is empty if you have to sacrifice the people who make life worth living." Love. Wins Natalie felt tears streaming down her face. Claire grabbed her hand and squeezed it tightly. "He is choosing you. He is publicly choosing you over everything else." Dominic finished his speech with words that would be quoted in business journals for months afterward. To the young professionals in this audience, I want to say this. Yes, work hard. Yes, pursue your goals with dedication and focus. But do not make the mistake I almost made. Do not let fear keep you from being vulnerable. Do not let other people's opinions dictate your choices. And never ever sacrifice real love for professional advancement. Because at the end of your life, no one remembers the size of your bank account or the deals you closed. They remember how you made them feel and whether you had the courage to be authentically yourself. The speech ended to stunned silence. Then scattered applause that grew into a standing ovation. Dominic left the stage without taking questions, heading straight for his car. He drove directly to Natalie's apartment, taking the stairs 2 at a time. When he knocked on her door, Natalie opened it immediately. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was smiling. "That was the most reckless thing you have ever done, probably." Dominic stepped closer, his voice soft and intense. "I am sorry for pushing you away. I am sorry for being afraid. I am sorry for not fighting for us from the beginning. You were right about everything. I was scared. I was letting other people's expectations control my choices. But I am done with that now. I love you, Natalie. I am completely, desperately in love with you, and I do not care who knows it or what they think about it." Natalie reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing his jawline. "I love you too. I have loved you since that first night when you made ruining your jacket seem like no big deal. When you talked to me like I mattered, like my dreams were worth hearing about. Dominic pulled her into his arms, holding her like he never wanted to let go. I know this is going to be complicated. There will be more media attention. People will have opinions about our age difference and how we met. My business might take some hits, but I do not care about any of that. All I care about is being with you. They stood in her doorway, wrapped in each other's arms, and kissed with the passion of two people who had almost lost each other. Claire quietly slipped out past them, giving them privacy with a knowing smile. 6 months later, the Seattle Art Foundation's annual charity auction was in full swing once again. Natalie stood in the elegant ballroom wearing a stunning emerald dress, her hand firmly clasped in Dominic's. They had weathered the media storm together, facing criticism and speculation with united strength. Sterling Properties had actually grown stronger after Dominic's public speech, attracting clients who admired his authenticity and values. Natalie's design career had flourished too. Her work for Sterling Properties had led to other high-profile clients, and she was now running her own small but successful design firm. More importantly, she and Dominic had built a real relationship based on mutual respect, shared dreams, and genuine partnership. As the auction began, Dominic guided Natalie to a quiet corner of the room. Near the same spot where they had first met, he turned to face her, reaching into his pocket. "A year ago, you literally bumped into my life and changed everything. You challenged me to be better, to choose love over fear, to remember what truly matters. Every day with you has been an adventure. Every conversation makes me think differently. Every moment reminds me how lucky I am." He dropped to one knee, and Natalie's hands flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. The people nearby turned to watch, smiling at the romantic scene. "Natalie Harper, will you marry me? Will you keep bumping into my life every day and making it beautiful and chaotic and absolutely perfect?" Natalie was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, absolutely." "Yes." As Dominic slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, the ballroom erupted in applause. This was the same place where their story had begun, with spilled wine and awkward apologies. Now it was the place where they promised forever. They had proven that real love could overcome age differences, wealth disparities, and social expectations. They had shown that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most beautiful destinations. And they had learned that choosing love over fear was always the right decision. No matter what the cost, standing in that ballroom, surrounded by the same wealthy donors and elegant artwork, everything had changed and yet felt perfectly right. Natalie was no longer the nervous young designer trying to find her place in the world. Dominic was no longer the lonely millionaire, building an empire with no one to share it. Together, they had found something worth more than any business deal or professional success. They had found each other, and that made all the difference.